Hello everyone, Don here with an update on the Corsair project. Got down here, brought everything I thought I needed for this job, and brought everything except my camera. So I'm going to try and make this video off of my cell phone, and then I should be able to hook it up to my computer, download it, and then get her up on YouTube so you guys can see what's going on. All right, I came down last week and was looking at the retract mechanism for the tail back there, and I couldn't understand the wiring. So then when I went home, I put the video up from last week that you all have seen by now. And on the way home, I thought that these two relays I mentioned up here, I got them marked as a fuel pump. And I thought, well, it can't be for the fuel pump because the fuel pump's on two separate switches, but I thought it was working off of one relay. Again, I've done this stuff years ago, so it slipped my mind how I did it. So I figured, no, it's got to be the relays for the tail wheel. It has to have a set of switching relays to reverse the motor direction. Well, so I dug out my blueprints and I looked at the wiring schematic that was suggested by the airplane designer. And from what I wrote down with the tail switches, how they were wired and how the wires to the motor were teed in with the switches, I thought, I may not have any relays. So when I got down here and looked at it, those are for the fuel pump, so that is correct. But the thing was, the main power to run the motor and the tail goes through the main gear switch, up-down switch, and it goes back and it goes through those little micro switches, which are essentially these guys. These are the micro switches. These are brand new ones, but this is the down switch. When the gear's down, it hits this and trips it. And then the up switch was a single switch, but because I'm wiring in red, green, blue lights for the gear up, down, and moving, I had to piggyback this. So this is going to have to be put in, and I'm going to have to redo the trigger on that so it hits both switches at one time. But these are all the switches. They're made for, they rate them at AC voltage. Let's see if I can get her to focus here. Yeah, it's 15 amp for a half horse, 125 volts, 250 volt AC, and a half an amp at 120 volts at 0.3 amps, 25 volt DC, whatever. So you're pulling full current through these switches, which I don't like. I always like to run a trigger from a relay through the switch, so you're only triggering a relay. So those are ready to go back in. And so this is what I got now. These are the two new relays I purchased. They're generally called like a Bosch 30 amp, but these ones are actually 40 amp. Got them at a custom audio store up in Erie. So what I got, and this is that speed controller, it's going to allow me to vary the speed of that tail wheel retract going up and down. So what we got here, we got your battery voltage coming in right from the circuit breaker on here. So when you turn on the master, that it's powered up. And then this is a ground, goes right to the ground rail inside the plane. And then this is a ground wire that's going to go back to the tail wheel. This ground wire has to be wired to the inlet ground wire. Because this box switches the ground side, not the positive side. The positive voltage comes in and jumps right out and goes right back out. So you see constant 12 volts. But what it does do is it switches ground. So I can't put this on the outputs. So one of these outputs is 12 volt power, goes to the relay. And then goes in and comes back out, and then the other one is the ground, which goes to both relays, which ends up going out to the tail motor itself. Now these two wires are what go to the motor. When they come through the relays, they go right through pin 87A and go directly to ground out of this controller, and then this controller in goes directly to ground, and then the power comes in and goes right into the relays. The power on the relays also has to, because once this relay switches from pin 87A, normally closed switch, to normally open, then the normally open switch closes and it turns one of these legs hot. And that dictates whether it goes clockwise or counterclockwise, and then flipping the gear switch will switch the other side and make it go hot and make it go the opposite direction. So that's all pre-wired. Now there's I got two wires here, the thinner wires. This little guy and this little guy are the ones that are going to go to these switches. One will go to the up, one will go to the down. There'll be a jumper in here from this ground wire because you're triggering grounds with these switches. And then the third wire, the center terminal, is what's going to go to the red, green, blue lights. So you got the center one is the red, this is the up, this will be green, blue light. and this will be the green light when it gears down. So it's like life flight's getting back from a run. So this is all pre-wired now. This box will be mounted up inside somewhere, probably up underneath this panel here, along with these two relays. It'll be mounted in just like these two relays are screwed through from the top. They're underneath, exact same type relays. So I've got 5 wires right now that got to go back to the tail, and I got to run 3 more wires just for the colors, red, green, and blue. So there'll be 8 wires in this bundle. It's going to go all the way back to the tail. Now what I did is when I first got down here, I started pulling the wires out. There was initially 6 wires back here. 2 of them were going back to the tail light for a future tail light. So I pulled every wire out except one, and that was one of the tail lights. They all snuck up through the inside underneath the foam, but between the foam and the box. So I had to pull them all up through and pull them out, and I left one in there, and that's right here, this wire. Now what I'm going to do is take just some regular automotive wire, and I'm going to solder it right onto that one, heat shrink it, and I'm going to take that wire and I'm going to pull this whole thing through and snake through a pole wire basically. And then that wire I'll hook up to one of the trigger or one of the LED lights of one of the 3 colors. So that's what I was doing today. I've got the landing gear switch hanging here. Turns out the one that had all the wires on it is for the mains, and the other side was for the tail wheel, but there was like a power ground coming off of here that went to the tail wheel as well. So but I got one more wire here, but I think these are just the 2 wires that go out to the left switches and the 2 wires go to the right switches. And I took the power wire off of here. I'll have to run a new power wire. But anyway, that's for the main for the hydraulics, which is those 2 relays right here. That runs the hydraulics for the main gear. The tail wheel runs off of the other side of that switch. There'll just be 3 wires. There'll be there'll be a common ground coming in, and then these 2 wires will go out to the micro switches, come back through the micro switches through that ground, and then that'll turn those relays on. Yeah, the micro switches will they get triggered. They trigger this, so through that switch. So the switch sends out a signal through to energize the coil on these to make them close to carry the high current for the motor. Remember, this whole circuit going to the tail is all low current except for these 2 wires for the motor itself. They're the high load, high current. I mean, they're 12 volts, but it's a few amps. But the gear switch itself is only triggering the coils inside these one at a time, one or the other at a time, and then that all goes through the micros, goes back through this ground, and then it'll energize that, and then the motor swings. So that's where we're at with that. So I pulled a tank loose, last week to get in here to check out this wiring. So now all I got to do is pull those. I brought my soldering iron and everything to solder some wire to that, and I forgot to solder. I got the flux, but I don't have the solder. So I went ahead and did all this pre-wiring. And these are the existing, some of these are the existing wires I pulled out, so they're all ready to correct length, so I cut the little ones. I'm only using 20 gauge, I believe, for running through the micros, because you're only talking milliamps to trigger those things. So this is all the stuff I had to bring down here. Let's see, this is the wire I bought. I bought this from McMaster Car, and it's 22 gauge up here on the left. 22 gauge. But that's mil-spec aircraft grade wire, and it was 20 some bucks for 100 feet. But again, that's all just low current trigger wires. So now once this system is up and running, the switch for the landing gear, even though it's like a 50-60 amp switch, it's only going to send 12 volts back to these relays. Well, the relays will be mounted up here. All it's going to do is trigger these relays through these switches. And then this will carry the current from the relays, high current in out. And then this had to be wired before everything, and then this ground had to be wired on the inlet side, not the outlet side, because the outlet side is going to be, like I said, it's a PWM. It pulses on and off, so the voltage would drop. You won't get a full 12 volts out to run back through here and there. So I had to run a separate ground that's grounded right to the frame. So it's grounded in with this wire. This is the power wire. So these 2 wires are on the same terminal. That's the in, and then these are the 2 out, 2 grounds out, and a single Yeah, just the two grounds out, and then they come in all through that. But it's a nightmare, but it's all in my head. I do also have a diagram at home I sketched up, but I've looked at it and I know it by heart now. I know how to use these to make a reversing circuit. So all that's left is run three more wires, make them all the length off that 100 feet I bought. And then these are only 3/16 wide terminals, and these are 1/4 inch terminals. So I had to buy 1/4 inch and then 3/16. So put these in there, hook up the third one, and then after they're all snaked up through the front, I may mark them. So I may mark one black, one red, so I know that on the tips out here, when I pull them through, I'll know which one hooks up to the up switch, which one goes to red, which one will go to green, and which one goes to blue. So, all right, I'm going to get out of here. It's coming up on, I think, 6 o'clock, and I've been down here since just after noon. But everything looks good. I brought my battery charger down, threw it on the plane because it was reading like 11.7 volts last week when I checked it. Figured, well, it needs charge. I can't get the charger clamps onto here because they're hidden, so I hooked them up inside to the plane, turned it on, started the charge, and it was at like 76% charge already. And that thing didn't run. It was probably between 5 and 10 minutes, and it was charged. So I turned it off, turned it back on, tried again, and it ran for a minute and said, nope, it's full. So, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off here, folks, and hopefully this will turn out all right for you guys to watch tonight. And as always, appreciate everyone taking their time to watch these videos. Feel free to leave any comments, questions, concerns, and I'll be back tomorrow and do a little more of this, and may or may not do another video for you. But so at least I'll get this going for you guys tonight. Again, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.